Welcome to the Business Infrastructure Podcast AI Conference.
Over the next 12 episodes, you'll hear a combination of fireside chats, keynote speeches, and product demonstrations, all centered around AI. Hi there, I'm Alicia Butler-Pierre, host of the Business Infrastructure Podcast, the show where we share operational tips, strategies, and tactics to help improve the way your company operates. We have another great episode lined up for you featuring our AI Tech Conference. This particular episode is bound to be packed with some really useful information that you can use to dramatically improve or transform the way you might be doing something in your back office operations. Before we get started, do me a really quick favor, please. Press pause, subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell so that you'll know when other episodes come, and then press play and we'll get right into it. I hope you enjoy this episode. We are about to feature yet another presentation from our virtual AI conference. And I'm so glad to be joined by our special guest today because I've had the pleasure of being a guest on her podcast. We're going to talk specifically about how you can use an AI tool that she absolutely loves to streamline your back office operations. Even if you aren't into podcasting, I'm sure there's some lessons that you can pick up along the way. Joining me is the lovely and very successful Beate Chelette. She's in Los Angeles, California, and she is the growth architect of Chelette Enterprises, as well as the founder of the Women's Code. And she's going to tell us more about both organizations. Specifically, she's going to share with us more about Momento FM, which is a tool that she and her team are using to really streamline some of their back office operations associated with her wildly successful podcast, which is the Business Architect Podcast. Is it the Business Growth? Business Growth.
The Business Growth Architect Show.
Okay, the Business Growth Architect Show. Please forgive me. I apologize for that. Beate, welcome to the show. It's so lovely to have you here today.
I was looking forward to speaking to you again, Alicia. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. I know you and I are kindred spirits in the sense that we are both very passionate about small businesses, especially women in business, particularly in designing scalable and sustainable businesses. Something that I also appreciate about your work is that you also work with startups as well. So you have that ability to work with companies of all sizes at every stage of that business cycle. I also know you are, again, so accomplished, Beate, and you have all of these accolades, but two that really stand out to me every single time I read your bio is that you've been recognized as one of the 50 must-follow women entrepreneurs by HuffPost. Woohoo! And you actually sold a photography business to Bill Gates. Can you tell us a little bit more about both of those accomplishments?
Yes, I'll be happy to. So, I'm originally from Germany. I am an immigrant, first generation immigrant. I started out in the creative aspect of work. So I've always liked creative, big thinking, big ideas, non-conforming people. And so I became a photographer. And from there on, I realized very quickly that I was better at the business side of things. And it just came really easy to me. And so I say this in the context today that I help people land planes, because a lot of people like to go to 30,000 feet and they have all these ideas and then they are unable to ever land a plane, and then eventually crashes because you have to refuel it or you have to have some sort of a plan to land it somewhere. And I was then a photo editor at Elle magazine, and to the United States, became a photography representative, a photography producer, went through what I call my 13 years of just brutal hardship and survival and bad luck and tragedies, from September 11th, where I lost $500,000 in a day, to a lawsuit with an employee that had a business idea, which was my business without me, where I lost $500,000, and a tsunami that killed one of my key vendors earthquakes, fires, floods, riots. I mean, stuff where you go, okay, I mean, one of these is fine, two of these maybe, but like 8 of those. And now I added a pandemic to my ever-growing repertoire, and we had a hurricane here in Los Angeles not too recently. So I'm starting to really get to a pretty full a suite of natural tragedies and things that can happen to you. And I was at this point where I had this great idea. I had this stock photography syndication, and I built it, and I was just in a lot of debt because I didn't have money. And so I'm $135,000 in debt. I'm going to Germany to drum up some business, and my father has a stroke. My father didn't have a stroke. My father had pancreatic cancer. My father dies 6 weeks later, and then I am having a complete meltdown at the funeral. My office calls and says, "We've just been served a notice, and I'm losing the house on top of everything." And that's it. I mean, it's game over in everybody's book. And I had to really learn how to surrender in this moment. I had done everything. There was nothing else I could do. I was physically not able to do anything more. I was financially not able to do anything more. There was literally nothing I could do. And then I get a letter from the White House, Alicia. And in this letter from the White House, a couple months later, it says the president sends his best wishes. And what had happened is that I had written in my absolute desperation, and because I had a nagging former mother-in-law, that she kept telling me, need to write a letter to the president. He's the number one guy in the country. Why bother with anybody else? Just go write a letter to the president. If anybody can help you, he will. And that was so outrageous and so ridiculous to me that I wrote the letter just to not have to talk to her about this anymore. And so I get the letter from the White House, which really changed my life because it put me in touch with the SBA, the Small Business Administration here in Los Angeles. And because the letter came from the White House, they also got a letter from the White House. And that means I got to talk to the second in command, because he thought, who is this nutcase that writes to the president of the United States instead of calling me? And so he says, well, why don't you
Wow.
call me directly? I'm like, never even occurred to me, Alicia. I mean, that's my mindset. And so they helped me restructure my debt into a 10-year fixed loan that freed up my line of credit, that brought me to break even 3 months later. So between bankruptcy and break even was 3 months. And then 18 months
Wow.
later, I'm the world leader in my category. And then a Bill Gates company comes and says, can you tell us how you do it? And I said, no. You want it? You buy it. And I said, how much
Mm.
do you want? I said, a couple million. And they said, okay.
Wow. What is the time span in which all of these tragedies and
13
these
years. And then
13
from when my
years?
father died to until I sold my business, 18 months.
Oh my gosh. Talk about a story of resilience and picking yourself back up. I mean, you are the epitome of what it means to be a successful entrepreneur, right? Because
You know,
most people, any one of those things, and it's just game over, right? For most people.
100%. And that, I think, is a lot of times on how these stories are being told, where you say, all right, if I would have thrown in the towel after the tsunami, or after my father died, or when September 11th happened, everybody would have said, you know what? Yeah, gee, you did everything you possibly could. I totally get it. And it would have made a lot of sense, but that just wasn't who I was. And so I I didn't have a plan B. This had to work.
Mm.
I didn't know what else I would do.
You know, I've had moments like this where I struggle and I want to just give up and say, I don't want to do this anymore because it's causing more pain than joy. Can you, if you wouldn't mind, can you talk a little bit more about that? What is that inner thing, whatever you call it, that keeps you going? I can certainly attest to that feeling of I don't know what else to do. Is it tenacity? It's more than just determination, right? Because there are a lot of determined people out there, but not many people who can, again, go through one, let alone all of the things that you just mentioned, and still be able to pick themselves back up and keep going. Do you think you have to be a little bit mad or manic and
Insane. Yeah.
unrelentless?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. So there's a series of questions I ask myself. And so the first question I ask myself, is it possible?
Mm.
Is what I'm trying to do possible? Do I know anyone who is doing what I'm trying to do? Does it exist? So in this particular case, that would have been, are there successful stock photography syndications? Absolutely, there are. Good. So then if it exists, then it must be possible for me. Then the answer to that is yes. And then the next question isn't can I, but the next question is how can I?
Mm.
And so when you ask yourself these questions in the right order, is it possible? If it's possible for me. If it's possible for me, then the question is how. Then suddenly the whole thing changes. And so, yes, I could have given up, but I knew there were people that did it. And I had a friend who had a 70 million exit. Now, I didn't have a 70 million exit, but he had a 70 million exit. So I knew it was possible. It literally happened right before my eyes. And he says, you're gonna be next. I said, what are you talking about? And I was next.
Wow. What a story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I had no idea that some of the details that you offered. I knew some things, but I didn't know a lot of the other details that you shared. Thank you so much. That's going to be so helpful for those who are watching us and hearing us as well. So I really appreciate that. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing now? So you sold this photography business to one of Bill Gates's companies. What happened next in your
Uh,
entrepreneurial journey?
well, then I went and I took a job at this Bill Gates company, and I became the global director of photography. And I realized on what really happens in corporate America, and I thought it was repulsive.
Mm.
And how women are treated in corporate America, how the whole men's code works, and how the women don't have a code. And that's when I sat down and I wrote a book, The Women's Code, where I realized that it's not just the men, it's a lot of times the women that are the worst with each other. How can we expect that the world is going to support us if women don't even support other women? And frankly, how can I be mad at a man when a man says, look, if half of my competition takes each other out, why should I get involved?
Mhm. Wow.
And I looked at this and I said, that's what's happening. Women are at each other's throat. They're so busy with taking each other out, and they go like, that bleep word
Hmm.
wants my job. And you go, she should want your job because you should want your boss's job.
Right.
And when men go into an organization, they say to the boss, you do know that the only reason I'm taking this job is because I want your job. And then that guy's going to say, great, that's what I was hoping you were going to say, because I want my boss's job. Women don't do that. And so I really got involved in the women's code and wrote the book, Happy Woman, Happy World, to outline for women what it'll take to have a code, and then to help men also to understand on how to help women. And I am, really sad to say that not much is changing,
Mm.
unfortunately, and that
Mm.
we are reverting. We are reverting back to things that I fought for, what, 20 years ago, 30 years
Wow.
ago, 40 years ago. I never thought I have to talk about abortion again. I never thought I have to talk about women's rights again. I never thought I had to talk about equality again. I thought we already had all these conversations. But
Right.
we keep going back to the same thing over and over and over again. And and it is because people don't like to change, and people don't like to move ahead, which is, what's going to bring us to our next topic, which is AI, because this is all about change. And
Absolutely.
it is all about now, what are you going to do with that? Because garbage in, garbage out, false
Absolutely.
information in, false information out. So, what is our responsibility as we are going into this new world? A moment is, only comparable to when the internet first came out. And I remember, when I got my first computer, I mean, I used to be on a floor with a telex machine, and that was
Mm.
only reserved for absolute emergencies. And I would, and there was only one on the entire, there were two in the entire building of the big publisher. And I had access to one of them, so I was very privileged that I could do that. And then one day somebody brings me, well, first the fax machine. That was game changing. And then a computer.
Wow.
And from there on, and then the whole internet exploded. And I think we're in a moment very much like that right now.
So you write, it sounds like you've written these two books, right? So both of those books, did that kind of help spawn or give birth to the Women's Code as an organization? And what exactly is the Women's Code?
So the Women's Code is the overall idea. The book is The Women's Code Presents Happy Woman, Happy World. So I wrote one book
Okay.
where I outlined the ideas of the Women's Code. And the Women's Code has a website and got lots of traffic and got lots of people that hate women and and argue uh over all these things. But I wanted to put this out there to really put this idea out in front of women to say we have to be first what the change that we want to see in the world, or there will be no change. Um and on whether people are going to abide by that or not, that I have absolutely no control over, but I certainly have outlined the pieces based on my experience and my many, 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 many years in business, and being in oftentimes the only woman in the room for decades that had part of these conversations. And I'm very concerned about what's happening right now.
Understandably so. And I know that that in and of itself could be an entire podcast, right? Just talking
Truly.
about that one topic alone. Um, Now I'm curious, at what point did you start your podcast? Because you've had some some huge successes there as well.
Yeah, so the podcast is now we're celebrating our 100th episode.
Oh,
So I
congratulations.
know, I know. I never thought that the
Wow.
podcast was such a wild idea, because we had done a social media campaign, and then the person that we hired kept saying, like, we're reaching out to you because we need you to be on our podcast. And then these people said yes, and I said, well, I guess I need to do a podcast now, and that's how the podcast was born. But primarily today I work as a growth architect, and that means that I work as a growth architect to work with people that need one out of three things. They either want to turn their talent into a business, that means they need to build the business and the business model, or they need a system with a differentiation factor where all their knowledge is neatly put under one umbrella, which we call the signature growth system, or they have a business and it makes money, and now they really need to seriously scale, and that's when they come for optimal growth alignment. And we're building out this plan on how to scale a company. So that's the three pieces that I primarily work on. The Women's Code is always going to be my love child, um, because I do love working with women, and I certainly have a lot of experience in shortcuts and understanding of what can happen. But my primarily focus right now really is the growth architect.
So as the growth architect and the types of entrepreneurs and small businesses that you are working with, is it that the podcast is serving almost as a business development funnel, or, is this a place for generating leads? Okay. So being that it's a source of lead generation, I can imagine, being that you also have a passion for systems and scale and process and sustainable solutions. Can you talk to us a little bit more about those back office workflows, and how
Yes.
that works just at a very high level, nothing, not revealing anything proprietary. And then maybe we can from there transition into how you all have been able to leverage a particular AI tool to streamline that effort even more.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So the reason we did the podcast was first because we had this idea with the lead generation, and then that kind of just naturally happened. And then we looked at the business growth architect show, and we said, well, the only reason we would want to do this is because we need some sort of a system behind it or process behind it. It has to do something. And so I am doing a lot of podcast guesting, and I'm a host. The people that go on the show are either potential clients or people that elevate us. There is nobody else that can go on the show, because there's no reason I need to give somebody a platform where I have no benefit from that. So you have to be very clear about when you do that. Yes, the quality of the conversation is really important, but you also need to think about, do you want to be liked or do you want to make money? And between the two of them, I'll probably take the let's make some money, and then we can figure out if we like each other, which I know is what you subscribe to as well. And if you need to like, I go to my friends, not social media. And the guesting is very, very much a lead generation piece where we select podcasts where we do believe that the host could use one of our programs. And when we go on the podcast, we offer a brainstorm session because I have a lot of credibility in the market and people pay a lot of money to talk to me. So when I go on a podcast, and oftentimes the podcast is a live coaching session, which is, I think, what you mentioned earlier, where you utilize and you let people really see how you work. And oftentimes stuff already comes up and I can help myself. And this is what I do, where then the host says, "Oh my God, this was amazing. Thank you so much for that." And then after the show, I said, "Listen, there's a couple of things you talked about. Why don't we get on a brainstorm session? I'll be happy to put my brain into your business and let's talk for like 15, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And whatever we come up with, it's yours. If I can help you, I'll tell you. If I can't help you, I will tell you. If I know somebody who can help you, I will tell you." And then it becomes a warm conversation that is not so threatening to a lot of people like a cold call.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, there's so many ways that you can monetize a podcast. It's not always the traditional ways of sponsorships, advertisements. Obviously, those are great, but use it as a business development tool. Pay attention to what Beate is saying. Pay very close attention because whether you are an existing podcaster or you may have been on the fence about podcasting, heed everything that she just said. So, with that in mind, knowing that you have a system in place, this lead generation system, right? And podcasting is an integral part of that. I can imagine, Beate, that you already have processes in place, but I'm curious, how are you all specifically leveraging AI to streamline some of those back office operational processes as it relates to your podcast?
Yeah, so we use Momento FM, which is happens to be one of my favorite tools. And Momento allows me to take my podcast and uh, dump the whole thing into this platform. And what it does, it pulls out highlights and quotes and headlines and title suggestions and metadata and tags and social media blurbs for X, for Facebook, for LinkedIn. And so when we give the command and we put it in, it automatically generates all of that for us. And then we export that based upon some of the prompts that they have pre-written and some of the prompts that we use. And then the amount of time for our show notes and to get this ready has dramatically reduced. I mean, we really don't need a writer anymore.
Mm.
On the other hand, it adds more to my plate because AI, you often can tell when it's written by AI because AI uses words like delve. Like, who the heck uses the word delve or crucial? I mean, there's a couple of words AI uses where you go, dude, you sound like my grandfather. And so you have to pay attention to when you go into these systems where you then double check and make sure that some of the things are within context. But Momento for us, and it also has an ability to do a short editing for shorts. So you can take not just your audio, you can take your video and put your video in it. And then it has a lot of editing tools to allow you to edit directly in Momento your shorts for your podcast.
Okay. Does it recommend? Can it take that raw video and say, "Oh, this is based on what we've quickly analyzed. This is what we recommend might make a successful short," on TikTok or YouTube or something like that?
It doesn't really have the capability to tell you what it'll make it successful, but what it will do, it will give you some highlights of this, and then when you have the highlights, then you kind of can see they call it the moments, and then you can select the clip and continue directly in the editor and then write this. But I'd be happy to show it to you if you want
Oh,
to.
absolutely. Please do. And while you're pulling up Momento on your screen, here at the Business Infrastructure Podcast, we use a different AI tool. But what I really like about what you're about to share with us is that it's not just audio, but it's video as well. And so I imagine you can upload these raw files, right? Whether it be audio or video, and then just kind of let it work its magic. Is that basically what you're doing? And how long does it typically take for it to start generating content suggestions? Is it about 10
It takes
minutes?
it takes up to a half an hour.
Okay.
So yeah, so it comes up with these, as you can see here, it comes up with these suggestions, and then you go in the editor, and then you can pick the type of, so you see that this was a side by side video, so you can pick this, and you have multiple templates. It also has the ability to post directly to social. There's different presets. You have different types of fonts available to you, so it actually goes pretty quickly. So if I was somebody who was just starting out, and the magic emojis, so it'll automatically apply emojis to the transcript. And I don't know if it's going to do it because we need a significant amount of bandwidth for the video here, but
Hmm.
the capabilities really are pretty significant, because I can see in the text. Yeah, I think it's going to take too long here. Because the capabilities are as such that it will allow me to add a lot of these editing tools and make a pretty good short. But you can see that it gives me, in this particular video that I just had chosen, and I need to find a long form video, because we sometimes add some shorts just for the copy. So if I go in here, and it can also do, so when I click on the moments, it'll bring up it gives me an option for 22 different shorts.
Wow. So let me make sure I understand. And for those who will only be listening to this and won't have the benefit of seeing it, you went
Yes,
to momento.fm, and once
yes,
you've logged in, you have essentially uploaded a raw video, let's say from an interview that you've conducted on your show. And then from there, you have selected the option, I'm assuming for it to start creating or making some suggestions for shorts based on that long form video that you've uploaded.
it does it automatically. Those are the
Oh, okay.
pre-prompts, because it's a
Okay.
tool specifically for podcasting. So it automatically adds all of this, and it finds you all of these moments.
Ah, okay. And then from there, you can, to your point, select, let's see, you can select the closed captioning, you can select a frame, it looks like, and the emojis that you were
Yes.
mentioning, you can
Yes, it
select
has
all of
an
those
edit it
things.
has an editor right here. And then
Okay.
when you go into the editor, you have different frames, you have different fonts, you have you can add uh it magically cuts it, so it takes out filler words, it
Mm.
adds emojis, it you can add B-roll. It's a pretty sophisticated system, and they're still like they're adding stuff left and right. So it's a really fabulous tool, and it's kind of cool to see on how quickly all of this is happening. And then they've added this piece where now you can also post it directly to your social.
So on average, Beat, how many individual pieces of content would you say that your team is able to generate, let's say just from one interview on your
40,
show?
40.
40.
Mhm.
Wow. Do you all actually put all of that out there? And if so, is it spread out over
a certain time period, a couple
Yeah,
of
so the
weeks?
content, we don't look at it from content, we look at it from touch points. So we do about
Okay.
30 to 40 touch points. The touch point is a short that will go on as a reel, that will go on as a YouTube short, that will go on LinkedIn. So that's already 3 touch points right there. And we generate content with the most number of touch points across as many different platforms as we can have.
That is amazing. How many people, I know you mentioned that the use of Memento has essentially cut out the need
Editor.
for an editor. How many people do you have on the team dedicated from your team that are working on podcast related or podcast production related activities
I have a
before
video
and after Memento?
I have a video editor, so we have a professional editor who does that, and then we have my virtual assistant who has a team of I think 3 or 4 people that she works with, and we have designed entire workflows in our project management software Asana, where
Mm.
we have in so every podcast has, I want to say, about 60 different steps to it until it gets published.
And so, is it that there's no longer as much of a need for that video editor, or were you talking about maybe a copy editor?
No, we're using the video editor, the copy editor we don't use anymore.
Okay.
So that was something that, and so we used to have a podcast production company that we let go, and we used to have a writer that we let go. And we put that into a better video editor, and the better video editor then creates the audio, and then we upload it ourselves to the distribution service for the podcast, and that saved us a lot of time and money on the podcast production, because we found that they were using AI, but we didn't like their AI solution as much as we liked ours.
Mm. That's awesome. Being able to bring that in-house and also saving money and redirecting the money that you were saving as a result of outsourcing it and putting that into a higher quality product. I love that. Do you have, I know we have to start wrapping up here, but I'm curious, being that you are on the cutting edge of technology, considering the amount of work that you have done with so many entrepreneurs, again, across so many business segments, sizes, industries, do you have any words of advice or encouragement for those who are still on the fence about whether or not to use AI? And it can be a little scary, it can be daunting anytime you have to learn anything new. I know you were talking about change earlier and how resistant people can be to change. What advice do you have for those who are listening to us and watching us right now, who might be on the fence about AI? And because truthfully, there are some people who say, no, AI isn't going to replace jobs, but what you just described was literally replacing, right?
It already is.
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
already did. So what advice do you have for
Um,
entrepreneurs regarding
well,
AI?
number one, I mean, when the internet first became the internet, people were like, well, why would anybody need a website? And now, unless you have a website, it's nothing. I use AI for everything. I have a process in place, and we constantly looking for other tools where I now take the work that I do on the higher end level, where I do the growth strategies, and I take conversations that I have with clients over weeks, often months, and then I take these and I build entire plans, launch plans,
Mm.
just based up on what we talked about, and I run it through AI, and then I do a 6 months launch plan based on that. Yesterday, I had a conversation. I had a brainstorm with a new client, and we went through what it could be, what it couldn't be. We literally were brainstorming. Then I ran it through AI. I said, run me a SWOT analysis on the different ideas. Tell me what these different ideas were. That would have taken me normally at least an hour to write. I had that thing written in 10 minutes.
Wow. Wow. And so because you have been able to significantly speed up some of those processes, essentially enables you to be able to do more in the same amount of time, which means more revenue
And better, and
and
better,
better quality.
and better. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I have found that AI sometimes goes and it just comes up with something really random. And it's still kind of like a child. So when I then say, that was really terrible, you misunderstood, then it says, oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. But then on the second, suddenly magically it figured out what I wanted. So there's definitely some intricacies in there where I'm very curious, sort of on the programming side of things on the
Hmm.
OpenAI, how that kind of worked. But I love it. I use it every day. I use it for everything. It's always open. It's always
Wow.
open.
So it sounds like there's definitely some other tools that you're using. Can you plug those really quickly? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, so another tool that I use is a maxai.me. That's one of my favorite tools. Then I use a tool that breaks down longer text into that automatically imports it, which is a plugin. I'm just trying to figure out what that's called, but it escapes me. So you just also have to constantly look at what the different plugins are for AI for ChatGPT and see what is out there. But maxai.me and Momento, along with ChatGPT, are probably things I use the most.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And we cannot close without you plugging your show. So please tell us more about your show, where people can find it.
Yeah, so my podcast is the Business Growth Architect Show. You can find it wherever you pick up your podcast. And our episodes are all around strategy and how do you, build, grow, and scale a business, grow your authority, and scale your impact.
And how can people learn more about the work that you're doing as a growth architect? Where can they
You
go
know,
to learn more
so
about that?
the first thing that I would tell everybody to do, we literally just launched a quiz, and we realized that a lot of people are very concerned about, should we go in business? What's my earning potential? How much money can I make? So I came up with a quiz. I came up with a profit formula. So you go to whatsyourtalentworth.com and
Oh, I
take the
love
quiz, and it will
that.
give you the actual number of your earning potential. Now, what people will find is that there's going to be a discrepancy between what their earning potential is and what they're earning right now, which is exactly why you and I are in business. Because if you can make this much money and you're not, you need a business growth consultant to help you to do that.
Oh, I love that as a natural lead generation
Exactly.
tool to get people to you and your group. Now, I know you also have some online communities as well. We talked about the women's code, but there's a LinkedIn group that you have as well, right?
Yes, and we just renamed it to Turn Your Talent into a Business. So you can find that we have almost 60,000 people in that group now.
Wow.
I've had this group for over 10 years now. It was one of the first groups on LinkedIn. And I also have a group, the Women's Code, also on LinkedIn. And we have now a Facebook group called Turn Your Talent into a Business, because we're really realizing the potential in the market right now that people wanting to go out on their own or figure out what entrepreneurship might look like.
Absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. We will make sure that we have links to everything, especially whatsyourtalentworth.com. I can't wait to take that
Do you like
quiz
the idea?
myself.
Do you like this idea?
I
I mean, I knew
love
you would
it.
like,
No,
because
I
then,
love that idea.
I mean, if
I
someone in it
do.
goes and says, I could make $450,000, and then you have a $3,000 program, it should really sell itself.
Absolutely. I love, love, love that. And it's such a catchy name. So I can't wait to take a look at that
All
myself.
right, let me know your number.
I will. Well, Beate, thank you so, so much. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You are a phenomenal woman. I can only hope to aspire to get to your level one day, but I do appreciate you taking time to not only share with us your journey as an entrepreneur, but giving us a glimpse into some of the things that you all do behind the scenes. with your show and how it serves as a lead generation into the work that you're doing as a growth architect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and we have even more great videos coming up for you. They'll include actual demonstrations of different AI tools that you can start using to improve the way your business operates. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss any of this information that's coming up. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.